The LA Kings scrape out a point, but were powerless to get two. That and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Well, the LA Kings were back in action in Game 56 of the NHL season, Game 3 of their three-game homestand, as they would host another Pacific Division foe in the Vancouver Canucks. The Kings were coming off a thrilling 5-2 win over the first-place Vegas Golden Knights on Monday when they scored 4 goals in the third period to rally for the victory. The Kings lineup in this one would have a few surprises. The forwards would be what we're used to, and it would still be the 11-7 setup, 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. Andrei Kopitar centering the top line with Adrian Kempe and Alex Turcotte. Philip Deneau the second line with Warren Foegele and Trevor Moore. Quentin Byfield centering the third line with Alex Ferrier and Kevin Fiala. And Trevor Lewis centering the fourth line with Tanner Jeannot and a rotating group of wingers in there as well. Akil Thomas was the lone forward. That was a healthy scratch. As for the defense, you'd still have the top pairing of Mikey Anderson and Vladislav Gavrikov. However, Drew Doughty would not be in the lineup day-to-day with a lower body injury, so Brandt Clarke would draw into the second pairing alongside Joel Edmondson. And as far as the power play responsibilities for Drew Doughty, Clarke took over as the quarterback on the number one power play unit. As for Doughty's penalty kill responsibilities, the Kings ended up going with just 3 defensemen on the PK. That would be Mikey Anderson, Vladislav Gavrikov, and Joel Edmondson. The third pairing defensively was still Jacob Moverar and Jordan Spence, with Kyle Burrows as the 7th and extra defenseman. As to why Spence didn't move up to the second pairing and Clarke inserted into the third pairing, I'm guessing it's because Clarke and Edmondson had worked together earlier in the season, while Spence and Moverar had some chemistry as well, so they probably didn't want to, discombobulate 2 different pairings when they only needed to do 1. So that's probably why Brandt Clarke was inserted into that second pairing with Joel Edmondson. Another surprise, David Riddick getting the start in net, and Darcy Kemper would be the backup. We'll talk a little bit about that decision coming up. As for the game summary in this one, well, the Kings did not get any carryover from that 4-goal third period in their previous game against Vegas. LA didn't get much offensively going in that opening period. They couldn't generate a lot of chances. They only had 4 shots on goal and really didn't have any quality scoring opportunities. The Canucks, meanwhile, would get on the board with the first goal of the game and would lead 1-0 after the first period. Second period, more of the same, as the Kings were still looking to get something going offensively. Adrian Kempe would take a bad penalty, and the Canucks would take advantage with a power play goal, and Vancouver led 2-0 after 2 periods. Would the Kings have some more third period magic after that 4-goal third period performance in their previous game against Golden Knights? The answer was yes. Adrian Kempe would score to get the Kings on the board and give them a much-needed spark. They were much better after that. Warren Foegele then would tie it up on a beautiful deflection. Eventually, the game would go overtime, but the Kings were unable to score on a 4-on-3 power play opportunity. The Canucks got 1 shot on goal in sudden death, and they would score on that 1 shot and pull out a 4-3 victory. The Kings do get a point out of that overtime loss, improving to 31-17-8 on the season for 70 points. LA is now 19-3-3 on home ice this season. We'll get you caught up on where the Kings are in the Pacific Division standings coming up, because that 1 point was a big 1 point. As far as the game stats in this one, Vancouver with a 3-2 win in overtime. Shots on goal favored the Kings 26-17. That was after being badly outshot in the opening period, but the Kings had more shots on goal in the second, and then many more shots on goal in the third. Power play is, though, the story of this game. Vancouver 1 for 2, while the Kings were 0 for 4. Faceoffs narrowly favored LA 27-26. Hits narrowly favored Vancouver 28-27. Block shots favored the Canucks 17-10. So what was good for the Kings from a team standpoint? Well, the third period, thanks to Adrian Kempe's goal, LA finally got some momentum going. They were able to turn things around in the third period after two pretty lackluster periods before that. They were able to finally get some sustained pressure, and they outshot the Canucks 11-4 in that final period, playing with a lot of injury, the final period in regulation anyway. What was not so good for the Kings from a team standpoint? Well, the first two periods, no sustained pressure at all, not much energy, poor execution. The Kings did have some chances and even a few odd man rushes, but they either decided to force a pass that would be deflected away or didn't even end up getting a shot off. I don't really have an explanation for it, especially after that amazing third period in the previous game against Vegas and the power play. Mentioned it when we were going over the game stats. And it has been better at home, and it has been better of late. Back-to-back games, the Kings had one power play goal. And that obviously they had they had another goal they scored against Vegas. It was right after the power play expired. So statistically, it wasn't a power play goal, but realistically it was. But 0 for 4 against Vancouver and didn't look good doing it, especially in regulation. Huge moment in overtime with a 4-on-3 power play. And they had a couple of decent chances, but could not capitalize. And that missed opportunity, not cashing in on that. And then Vancouver gets the game-winning goal. So this is a type of performance that can only make the Kings more desperate, I would think, to acquire someone at the trade deadline to help on that power play, because the two big stories, the two big takeaways from this game against the Canucks, a lack of energy and execution for the first two periods, and just many missed opportunities on the power play. Time for our coach's quote from Kings head coach Jim Hiller, who said about this game, quote, "I didn't think we were great. We just weren't sharp. Even our third period, I didn't think we were sharp. We scored. It's great to see, and we played much better, but I still think we weren't sharp. Passes on the tape, the power play, all that kind of stuff. Those are examples for me of we're just weren't crisp," end quote, from Kings head coach Jim Hiller. So what was my big takeaway from this game? Well, we're still waiting for the Kings to play 3 solid periods since they've come back from the Four Nations break. Now, they have had some very good periods. They've had some very mediocre to bad periods as well. Just as an example, terrible second period against Vegas the other night, and then an amazing third period. So the inconsistency is certainly a little bit of a concern. Just have to have 3 better periods, not this constant kind of up and down. And I would have to agree with Jim Hiller, and I'm not sure why, but the Kings, I mean, they were trying, they were playing hard, but just the execution, it was just off. And at this point of the season, that really shouldn't be happening. I mean, look, not every pass is going to be perfect and crisp and right on the tape, but, just kind of most of the game, passes just weren't connecting. Just, here and there, shots wide, or maybe just taking that kind of extra second before getting a shot off. And that meant that the defender had just that extra second to get his stick in the shooting lane and deflect it away. So it looked like a game. If you didn't know any better, if you watch this game, you would think the Kings had just come off from several days rest. They just looked a bit rusty, and I guess you just chalk it up maybe as one of those games. And maybe, look, I'm never going to say that, I'm unhappy if the Kings can at least get a point when they certainly don't play one of their better games. But again, not a great performance, needs to be better, especially as we're getting in this time of the year. Need to have more consistent efforts and not this up and down, one good period, one bad period, one good period, one bad period. All right, up next, we're going to get into some of the individual performances for the Kings in their overtime loss to the Canucks. That's next. You're on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee. But I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it. And that's why I turned to Trade. That's the name of it, Trade. And let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the number one specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or you know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. The subscription is easy. No more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever's on the shelf. And if you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it for free until they get it right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/LockedOnNHL for 40% off your first order. Drinktrade.com/LockedOnNHL. Let's talk about some of the individual performances in the loss to the Canucks. And we always start with the goaltender, David Rittich, a surprise starter for me in this one. It wasn't like Rittich hadn't seen any action lately. Remember, he had to play back-to-back games right before the Four Nations break because in that second game, it was Darcy Kemper leaving the team for some personal reasons. And look, I certainly get that you probably want to give Darcy Kemper a few days off as you go down the stretch to kind of get rested a bit for the playoffs. But everyone just had 2 weeks off. And coming up in March, the Kings are going to play back-to-back games 3 times. They're going to play back-to-back games once in April. So there's 4 starts for David Rittich right there. You've also got some games coming up against some lesser competition like Chicago and San Jose. Those could be starts for Rittich as well. I would have started Darcy Kemper in this game against the Canucks, and that's not second guessing. That's first guessing. I said that at the start of the game. With all that said, I'm not blaming David Rittich for this loss. Just looking at the goals that he allowed. First goal, Joel Edmondson tried one of those sliding on his belly defensive plays that we see Mike Anderson and Vladislav Gavrikov do so well. And it seemed like Edmondson, maybe he mistimed it or he kind of lost his footing as he was doing it. Either way, he allowed the Canucks player to go right around him and get the shot off. It goes off the crossbar and in. Second goal was shorthanded. Joel Edmondson again chases behind the net, allows the player to get a pass off in front, and there was a player who got position, a body position on Mikey Anderson and was able to score. And then the overtime game winner might have been screened by Brant Clark, but the shot would beat Rittich top corner blocker side. Now, was he big save Dave in this game? Clearly not, but I didn't think he was horrible, but not good enough. On the season, Rittich drops to 12-11-2 overall, and he is now 9-2-2 on home ice this season. Let's talk about Adrian Kempe. Had the key goal to finally get the Kings sparked in this one. I was waiting for someone to do something to get the Kings going. I thought maybe Tanner Jeannot could get into a fight or something to get him going. And fortunately, it was the Kings' best player, in my opinion, Adrian Kempe, that took the reins, led the way, took the puck on a give and go with Vladislav Gavrikov at his own blue line, raced down the ice with the full head of steam, and then put a wrist shot in the top corner of the net, beating the goaltender glove side. Beautiful goal for Kempe, his team leading 26th of the season, leads the team in points with 49. I thought after a lackluster opening period that Jim Hiller might go with the Kempe, Byfield, Fiala line in the second period. Now, he eventually did, but not until the final minutes of the second period. He had gone to that line in the Vegas game, and it really sparked the Kings. Q, Fiala, Kempe did play the entire third period together, and it's pretty clear that that line can provide an offensive spark when necessary. Now, the question is, will we see that line start a game sometime soon? I don't know the answer to that, but it seems to me that Jim Hiller kind of likes to have that card that he can play at some point in the game if he needs to. But we'll see if that line, Kempe, Fiala, and Byfield actually starts a game out together. That'll be interesting to see. I do have to call Adrian Kempe out on an awful penalty that he took in the second period. Vancouver would end up scoring on the ensuing power play to make it 2-0. An absolute frustration penalty. a trip behind the play, no reason to do it, and very uncharacteristic of Adrian Kempe. He's usually a much smarter player than that. So kudos to him to get that goal, to get the Kings going, but also bad job by him taking a bad penalty. Warren Fogle had the Kings' other goal, tied it up in the third on a beautiful deflection on a Jordan Spence point shot that was going way wide of the net. I've always marveled at NHL players and their ability to be able to deflect pucks into the net. It is certainly a skill, but it's also something that players work on a lot in practice. Clearly, Fogle has put in that work. Really, really nice goal for Warren Fogle, his 16th of the season. He's got a decent shot at being a 20-goal scorer this year, back-to-back seasons, and last year he set a career high with 20 goals. So I thought Warren Fogle was a really solid offseason addition for the Kings, and I think he's actually turned out to be even better than probably we all thought he was going to be. Kevin Fiala did not have a point. He was a +2. He had 4 shots on net, tied for the team lead. He certainly was active, but he seemed to be fighting the puck all night. He just didn't get many clean looks, kind of fumbled the puck here and there, and it kind of kept him from getting some of the shots off they wanted to get off. Trevor Moore, I want to say I'm encouraged by how he played. Of course, he had the 2 goals against Vegas, and he had a couple of great opportunities. There was one I don't know how he didn't score on in the third period, had a wide open net and just somehow missed it. But I still think he is getting more and more opportunities, and hopefully he can just convert on a few of those, and certainly the Kings will need that. I didn't want to talk about Anze Kopitar. No points in this one, no shots on goal, 21 minutes, 22 seconds of ice time, 5 minutes and 56 seconds on the power play. He was good in the faceoff circle. He won 8 draws, lost only 3. But he did look slow in this game, and, not that Kopi has ever been a speed burner, but he just looked a little slow in this game. I thought it was noticeable. The Kings captain has 1 goal in his last 20 games. Great first 3 months of the season for Anze Kopitar, but it seems like he definitely has slowed down. The production hasn't been there. I did have a few people comment on social media to me about maybe time to take Kopi off the top power play unit in place of Quentin Byfield. There's also been talk from others about him not being the top line center anymore. As far as the power play, I doubt that's going to happen. I don't think anyone is saying that Kopitar is the problem with the power play, but I also think it's fair to wonder if maybe it could be better with Quentin Byfield. I've said Anze Kopitar, I think, is the greatest LA King of all time. But that said, despite his, Hall of Fame player to be status and all that, I mean, in the end, you have to do what's best for the team. And if that's something that the Kings want to try, I could understand it. I don't think it's something that is not on the table. It should be on the table. I'm not suggesting benching Anze Kopitar. I'm just saying that maybe it's not that crazy of an idea to try Quentin Byfield as the number 1 center on the top power play. As far as Kopitar not being the team's number 1 center, look, he's listed as the top line center, but I think ice time certainly will tell you who is the number 1 center. And at least in this game, it was Quentin Byfield. He played about 1 minute and 30 seconds more than Anze Kopitar, and he had about 3 more minutes than Kopi at even strength. Goes Kopitar playing on the power play and the penalty kill. And look, Kopi is still an important part of this team, and I get the questions about him a little bit right now, but we talk about players that need to get going. We've talked about Kevin Fiala, he's gotten going lately. We've talked about Quentin Byfield. We've talked about Trevor Moore, but at this point, Anze Kopitar, I think, is in that conversation as well. Brandt Clarke. I do want to say I like Brandt Clarke. I think he's going to grow into being a very good player, and I'm not that concerned about what we've seen from him lately. That said, I didn't think he played very good in this game against the Canucks. And for all the people out there saying that he needs to play more, well, he had a golden opportunity to show what he could do with Drew Doughty out and him getting second pairing minutes. And I just don't think he told the coaching staff, hey, look at this. Look what I can do. I deserve more minutes. As they say, tape don't lie. And look, he's young. He'll learn. But he wasn't great in this game. And to be fair, there were a lot of other players that weren't great in this game as well. So I don't want to just single out one game and condemn him for it. But again, he had an opportunity. He got second pairing minutes, and he didn't really take advantage of it, in my opinion. He had one nice shot on goal. He was quarterbacking the number one power play unit. He had a nice shot on goal with some traffic in front at one point, but the power play wasn't very good. It's certainly not all his fault, but again, he's at the point he's running things and didn't provide any kind of real spark in that regard. And he had a key turnover in overtime. He tried a fancy between the legs move, turned it over. It goes the other way. Now it wasn't like he turned it over and they go down and score and end the game, but the possession that he gave up by turning it over was the possession that the Canucks did score the game winning goal on. So, that's not a play you try in overtime. I mean, you're up 2 goals in the third period. Maybe you try something between the legs and a fancy kind of a play, but tied 2-2 in overtime, not the time and not the place. Brant Clark finished with no points. He was a -1. He had a block shot, 1 shot on goal, 18 shifts, 16 minutes and 49 seconds of ice time. So maybe telling that in overtime, when the Kings got a 4-on-3 power play, Jim Hiller did not put Clark on the ice. He started 4 forwards instead. Maybe telling. Mikey Anderson, not going to make the highlight reels, but I thought he played a very solid game, minus the one play where the Canuck player did get position on him to score that goal, that second goal. But Mikey had a lot of really good defensive plays. Third period and overtime, made some key plays. Was a +1, had 3 block shots, 2 hits, and led the team in time on ice with 26 minutes and 30 seconds. And I did want to mention Drew Doughty. Jim Hiller saying after the game that Doughty would accompany the team on their upcoming road trip. So that's good news. So it looks like he will be playing coming up on this road trip very, very soon. Coming up, the Kings made a trade on Thursday, and why it's important for the Kings to get a point against the Canucks. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets for a same-game parlay. FanDuel's live betting feature keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three-pointer. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, I did want to update the Pacific Division standings. Golden Knights are still in first place with 74 points. The Oilers in second place with 72 points. And the Kings, picking up that 1 point, did gain ground on both Vegas and Edmonton. The Kings are now 2 points back of Edmonton for second place, 4 points back of Vegas for first place. And they still have 2 games in hand on both teams. So they played 2 fewer games than both the Oilers and the Golden Knights. So there is still the opportunity to gain ground. And again, that 1 point moves them a little closer to those 2 teams. Meanwhile, the Canucks get 65 points on the season because they got the 2 points. They're 5 points back of the Kings, but LA has also played 2 fewer games than Vancouver. The Canucks had fallen out of the final wildcard spot in the West the night before when the Calgary Flames won, but with that 2 points in the win over the Kings, the Canucks moved back in to that final wildcard spot in the West. Mentioned it a moment ago, the Kings actually made a trade on Wednesday, but with all due respect to those involved, likely only friends and family were really interested in this deal. The Kings and Minnesota Wild made a 1-for-1 swap, although maybe more accurate to say the Ontario Reign and Iowa Wild made a deal. Forward Tyler Madden leaves the Kings organization in exchange for defenseman Joseph Ciccone. Madden was selected in the 3rd round of the 2018 draft by the Vancouver Canucks. He was acquired by the Kings in the Tyler Toffoli trade. He played 47 AHL games this season with the Reign. Madden, 25 years old, had 8 goals and 17 assists. In parts of 5 seasons with the Reign, he scored 58 goals with 128 points. He has yet to make his NHL debut. And Ciccone is 27 years old. 2 goals, 12 assists in 51 games with Iowa this year. was a 5th-round pick of the Dallas Stars back in 2015. After 4 years at the University of Michigan, he has played parts of 7 seasons in the AHL with 10 total goals and 68 points. He has yet to play an NHL game as well. Did want to say congratulations to King star Adrian Kempe, who got married on Tuesday. He and his wife are expecting their first child soon as well. I believe he will be the 4th Kings player this season to have a child during the year, joining Darcy Kemper, Joel Edmondson, and Kyle Burrows. And we've had a few February birthdays. On Monday, it was Philip Deneau and Jordan Spence. On Wednesday, Alex Turcotte turned 24 years old. Too bad he couldn't have a special birthday win like Deneau and Spence did against Vegas. Also, Brant Clark turned 22 on February the 9th. All right, we're heading out on the road, are the LA Kings now. Quick 3-game road trip. Dallas Friday, St. Louis Saturday, and Chicago Monday. The Stars sit in 2nd place in the Central Division. The Blues are 5 points out of the final wildcard spot, while Chicago is making plans for next season. So again, 3-game road trip coming up for the Kings. Friday, Saturday, and Monday, Dallas, St. Louis, and Chicago. All right, for you everydayers, those who listen to watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Friday, we are going to recap that Kings-Stars game shortly after it ends. That's a 5 p.m. LA time start. You can see it locally on the FanDuel Sports Network, nationally on ESPN Plus, and you can listen to the game on the 710 ESPN app. Also, Friday, it will be a Kings fan feedback show as well. So a very jam-packed show on Friday. First half of the show will be devoted to recapping the Kings-Stars game, and then the second half of the show will be all about your fan feedback. If you want to send an email in for the feedback show, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You're always welcome to post your thoughts if you're watching on YouTube in the comments section as well. Would love you to stay connected with the show on X, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We will talk to you on Friday. And as always, go Kings go.